Alright, so I wanted to dive into the topic of Elisa Bridges, which is Miss December 1994. Now, what I find very odd about her life and death, and everything I'm just saying is just a personal opinion of mine. Alright, so I'll just get right to my thoughts. She died in 2002, and there's a couple things here that I think are a little bit odd if you were to ask me. So it looks like she was hanging out at somebody's house in Beverly Hills, having some drinks, all sorts of stuff like that. She was 28 years old, very young, and she died, apparently, of an overdose. Now, what I think is kind of weird about this whole thing, if you ask me, is the very little media coverage that was done on her death. Literally, if you were to go Google her name right now, Elisa Bridges, one article comes up, and that is from the OC Weekly. Now, I don't know how accurate their articles have been over the years, but they're basically main people to talk about it. So, on Playboy's official website, at the time of her death, they said that she died of natural causes, when the autopsy says she overdosed. Now, OC Weekly was reporting in their article that the guy that was in the same place as her reported her death, the time that she died, I should say. He told the cops that it was a different time than when she actually died from the autopsy. So that is a little bit strange, if you ask me. I have looked into her life online, and there is very little. Like I said, the hardly any media coverage on this is insane, and even to this day there's really nothing about her death. And as I looked more and more into her life, I noticed that the people that did the OC Weekly article actually got invited down to the Playboy Mansion by half, which I think is weird. If you were to ask me my opinion, it's like, why would you invite people that are basically talking smack and not talking about you in the best light? I just don't get that. I'm not saying Hef is an innocent angel by any means, but it sounds like his friend that was a part of this, that was there the time that she died, and I'm going to bring up his name because he does have a tongue twister of a name here. Anyways, it doesn't really matter. He was there, and then he died in 2007. He was an owner of horses and bred horses. It looks like in his spare time he actually named one of his horses Hugh Hefner, so I looked into him, and he died in 2007. So it looks like there really is no justice if Elisa had something more go on with her life. Now, somebody also took it upon themselves to release her autopsy photos online, which I thought was somewhat helpful, but at the same time it looks like she died of an overdose, and she died of an upper and downer. So it looks like she did heroin and then did some other kind of illegal drug as well, like methamphetamines. Basically, she spent the night at his house, and the next morning she woke up pretty much dead. Now, this Nahum, that's his last name, is Nahum, he basically told police that she was, having a good time at his house. From the sounds of it, they were just hanging out. But what I find odd is he says he didn't know anything, or doesn't really have much of a clue of what went on when the police asked him, which is kind of odd considering, if you ask me, in my opinion, she was in your house and you don't really have a clue of what went on, and then you lied about the time you found her, because apparently from the sounds of it, he told the police he found her at a certain time, and then the autopsy shows she died at a different time, so his story wasn't really adding up. So if he was not hiding anything, why lie? Is my thoughts and personal perspective. She was found in his house on February 7th. her own spacious two-bedroom Brentwood apartment was barely 15 minutes away. Nahum, 58, told police Bridges often stayed with him, always in the guest room. Her death certificate lists her time of death as 5:58 p.m., but that's just the time Nahum told police he found her. There is no time of death estimated in her autopsy report, is what I'm reading from OC Weekly. Which is kind of interesting because you figured they would be able to know a little more insight on that. As I'm going through the article here, they are really touching base on quite a bit. You know, what kind of natural causes kills a healthy 28-year-old woman is what they are saying. Is really what my thoughts were when I looked into this subject matter, and I find it very weird. The barely any media coverage, and then F asks these people that wrote this OC Weekly article down to his mansion for one of his parties. And the people that wrote this article gave a big rundown on this whole ordeal. And what I find also a little bit more interesting is that, well, I don't know how to put this. There is a kind of a conspiracy theory that I have, but we'll maybe touch base on that in a little bit here. I feel there's quite a bit going on with this. She dies in a house. 2 days later, Bridges' body was discovered, is basically what it said, from an autopsy. Her findings were striking. This 28-year-old Caucasian woman died as a result of acute an overdose, basically. Which, again, I think is weird. She did an upper and then a downer. It's like, well, what is it? And then some of the other things in here are just not really making any sense, if you ask me. I really don't understand why her death was not a bigger deal than what it was. I mean, clearly a good publication would realize, hey, this is a good article, we should write about it, and there's only one article on it. And my other point being, before I lost my train of thought there, is when the people that wrote this on OC Weekly, don't mind my burping, I'm having a bit of an energy drink here. The people that wrote this on OC Weekly didn't tell their whole story until Hef died, which I thought was kind of ironic. I do believe they actually told this whole story and ordeal a day later after he died. Why wait so long to talk about it, especially after he died? Now, I'm not saying Hef is no innocent angel, but just a personal opinion, he's very loyal to his friends, and unfortunately, if there was allegedly anything more sinister going on with her death, the guy that was basically with Elisa Bridges is gone. He's dead now. I googled him, and he died in 2007, and there's not really much a lot about this guy online. If you really were to take the time to Google his name, not a lot comes up, and if he was such a good friend with Hef, you'd figure there would be quite a few photos of them, all sorts of stuff. So I'm kind of confused why there is not more photos of them together. I don't think that they were very good friends. If they were such good friends, there would be at least a couple photos out there. I don't know, but it does look very odd that she just went over to his house one day. She OD'd in one of his bedrooms, and he does not know much about it, as this all went down in his house. Now, this Nahum guy, I'm just Googling a little bit more about this. He lived in Beverly Hills, and his name is Edward Nahum. That's what it is, basically. Alright, sorry about that. It sounded a little crazy here. So, I Googled more about him. He was a horse breeder. That's about it. It does not really show many photos out there of Hef or him, which I find a little bit more ironic. And when Playboy announced her death on their official website, and if you take the time, you can go and Google this, that they labeled it as a natural cause, when the autopsy clearly shows it wasn't natural causes. She died of quite a few combinations of drugs, and in the police article it basically says there was no drugs found anywhere in the room or the house, which I find a little more ironic because she died of an overdose. So how does any of this make sense, if you ask me? It really doesn't. And like I said, the very little media coverage on it blew my mind. And I do get that this happened in 2002, but you figure there would be quite a few articles on this and quite a few people talking about it, but there really is not anybody talking about it besides me right now. And everything I'm just saying in this video is just alleged, just a personal opinion I'm having on this whole subject. But I figured she died at 28. That's a very young age. You know, well, like I've met friends that have OD'd quite a few times and they were in their 20s, and I'm like not justifying any illegal drugs of any kind, but you know, being that young, you figure she could take it. And it just sounds weird because she was doing heroin and then methamphetamines, which are all illegal drugs. I don't get why she would do a downer and then do an upper, or vice versa. I know some drug addicts that they do a downer and then do an upper to just kind of pick themselves up. So maybe that could have been the case with her, but all of this seems very sinister in my opinion. This Nahum guy is just kind of denying it. And unfortunately, she died at 28, and there's not really a lot of information about her, her family. And if you just take a moment to go Google her name, you'll find the autopsy reports and all sorts of stuff on her, which I'm finding a little bit different, if you ask me. Like, why would somebody need to go and post your autopsy online unless they felt like, hey, we need to put this information out there, we need to see where it goes, at least it's public knowledge and online. Because if you do Google her name, Elisa Bridges, with her autopsy report, you will see quite a few articles and images on her autopsy. And of course the autopsy says she OD'd, but if there was allegedly something more to this, maybe she did not OD on purpose. It just sounds very weird. It's like there was no drugs found at the house, there's no drugs in the room, but she died of an overdose. He said that there was no drugs in the house and she was staying with him. And why would, like, you know, like I said, keep going on about it. It seems like Hef invited these guys down from OC Weekly to one of his parties. And I usually like to think that is a way of just kind of keeping an eye on you and basically seeing who you are in person. Because why would Hef invite these two guys down from the sounds of it, just to, what, hang out with him? Like, Hef would probably not like them, I'm assuming, because of what they were insinuating in their OCB, or OCD, I was going to say, but their OC Weekly article. I just don't get why he would invite them down when they're not talking about him in the very best light at all. It just seems very odd to me. In my opinion, sounds like he wanted to keep an eye on his Nahum friend, because maybe this Nahum character was maybe a bit more reckless. You know, again, there's not much information on him. He's a horse breeder, so I'd imagine there would be good money in horse breeding. But other than that, there's no pictures of him and Hef together. It said he died something with a liver failure or something like that, but I find it odd. He died a couple years after Elisa died in 2007. So that's a very interesting point, if you ask me. Like, she dies in 2002, he dies in 2007. That's 4 years apart from each other, which is even more ironic, if you ask me. And there's not many news articles, hardly any newspapers talked about it, and I'm just kind of wondering why. Like, you figured they would at least mention it because the word Playboy is attached. And her death, in my opinion, is a mystery because she was 28 and she seemed healthy. And just from personal perspectives and opinions and people I've seen that have major drug addictions, usually when they OD, they can sometimes survive it, but sometimes not. And maybe this might have been that case with her as well, because that's what the autopsy says. But there's not really many people speaking about it. No family members I can even look up. When you Google her name, there's very hardly anything that pops up about her, which I find even more ironic. You figure a big article like this would blow up and people would talk about it, and from my research of looking her up on YouTube, there's a couple of videos, but not really digging into any insights about her life and death. I mean, she just decided to go to his house. There was no drugs around in the room, but she OD'd, and he lied about the time he found her. I mean, there's all, in my personal perspective, there's so many points here that make him look, in my opinion, allegedly bad. Because if there was nothing to lie about, and it was just a simple cause, like, hey, she was just spending the night, I wasn't keeping an eye on her, then that's what you would basically say. Like, if she was so frequently to visit your house and stay over, why wouldn't you just be honest and be like, hey, she was just chilling? Because it does say in another article that she did stay in his guest room a lot, and there's not really much information about her. Again, like I said, anything. So it's hard to tell if these two had a personal relationship of sorts or what, because maybe he did not want to tell the media he was dating her, because as we know, when anything sinister happens with somebody's death, they always look at the spouse first thing. So if he were, in my opinion, to just play it off as a friend that was just, kind of helping her out, letting her stay at his house, then they would not maybe look so much more into it than they were just friends and he was helping her out. But there's so many odd twists and turns to this, because there's nobody talking about it. There's nobody, no family members, there's no articles on it, nothing. And Playboy lied and said it was natural causes. Like, why would Playboy even need to feel the need to comment on any of this? And why lie in their statement they made about her death that she died? Why say it was natural causes when it wasn't? Maybe it was out of consideration for her family at the time, is what I assume. But this Nahum guy was close to Hef and was an acquaintance of his, and there's really jack shit of them online. Nothing to be seen. If you Google Nahum, Hugh Hefner, and go to Google Images, there's nothing. It just really shows a picture of him and some memorial information, but that's about it. So I'm very confused on the subject. I like to think, in my opinion, that it is kind of a mystery. I mean, she's 28, and no one talked about it. That is the even more crazier thing about it. And you figure this is such public knowledge online that there would be somebody eventually that would talk about it. So I stumbled upon it one day, and I just looked into the facts at hand that were online, and then gave my own opinions and added my own thoughts to it in my head. And I thought, this just doesn't sound right. 28, and then he says he knows nothing, hardly knows anything that happened, but this all happened in his house, and he lied a few times. So if there was, again, anything sinister, there is no justice for Elisa, because he died in 2007, just a couple years after she did. So I guess the point being is, it looks like her death was not talked about at all. So I figured I would take the time to make this my last episode, I think, for Playboy Mysteries, because her memory deserves to be around and talked about. And this is all just my thoughts and personal perspectives on how I feel about the whole subject matter, and it feels like a mystery to me, that's for sure. So if you were to take a quick moment when watching this, maybe even pause it, go Google her name, and just look at what I'm seeing. It is ironic. one person or two people wrote one article, that was it, and it was never to be talked about ever again. It was kind of just like buried under the rug, and people went on with their lives. But I don't think, in my opinion, she just magically she just magically OD'd and he doesn't know a thing about it, and this all went down in his house. So when I stumbled upon this whole news article, I did discover some other Playboy playmates that died in the 60s very young, and nobody ever talks about those, and there's not much public knowledge on those either. So I'm going to dive into that, maybe perhaps in my next one that I do here. And I'm hoping to do a Sunday Fun Day book review on Crystal's bullshit book. I don't know if it's going to be any good. I've only flipped through a couple pages and read it. I was listening to the audio preview online and she was reading it, so I have 3 hours of pleasure of hearing her talk. And a lot of the fans online are saying the book isn't that great, but you know me, I'm definitely going to talk about it and give my whole thoughts on her whole gab fest. It sounds like she wrote the book for financial reasons, but I will dive into that much later on. And I'm hoping to also land an interview with maybe one of the bunnies, so just keep popping to my page every now and then, and I'm sure you'll see it. And just give me a follow if you want here. If not, no big deal. I know this is YouTube, it sounds so cliche, like give me a like, give me a subscribe, or whatever the fuck. I don't care if you subscribe. I just care that you come on and take a peek at my videos, because some people don't really have a YouTube account, they just follow certain YouTubers like myself. So I'm going to enjoy these strawberry cheesecake donuts. I'm not going to eat these right now. I was planning on doing kind of a video and eating my snacks. I might eat this KFC coleslaw I got here as well, have some late night snacks, and obviously I got my energy drink, so you know I'm going to be up for a bit. But anyways, as if you're still watching this video, I'm also doing a revamp soon on my website, justafrenzy.com. And for now, if you're still watching, please buy one of these. These are an American Horror Story New York City prop, and it's in a collector's card. So I'm doing a revamp on my website, but in the meantime, you can still buy stuff. This is on my website. It's cheap. If you're interested, go to justafrenzy.com. I'm hoping you guys enjoyed this topic at hand. I think Elisa Bridges' death and life just needs to be honored a little bit more, so I decided to take the time and talk about it. Again, I'm hoping to do an interview soon with somebody, so please give me your thoughts if you have any, and tune in next time. I'm actually going to maybe do one more episode of the Playboy Mysteries, because there is a couple of playmates, like I said, from the 60s that I found died very, very young, and not a lot of media coverage was on that either. So again, thanks everybody, and I'm hoping you have a rockin' night, and I will make another Gab Fest soon. So